So I wanted to make this reaction video to an older video from August 21st, 2019 by Rational Preps. The video's entitled "Your AR-15 Will Get You Killed, the Soldier Wannabe Test." Now, I'm a veteran of the United States Army, so I don't know if I would fall under this soldier wannabe test or not. Some might say that I was a wannabe even while I was in, I don't know. I'm not sure we even had that term actually in the late 80s. But in basic training, I trained on the M16A1, and then after being in my permanent duty station in Alaska for I don't know if it was a year or shorter, and then we got the I'd say it might have been about a year, and then we got the M16A2. So I've been trained on both the M16A1 and the A2. So anyway, I thought I would go ahead and put down a point, as he recommends, each time I pass the soldier wannabe test. But I want to provide a reaction to this video because I think it's kind of chock full of lots of false premises. I'm not sure why he's pushing this propaganda, but I want to take the time to respond to some of his assertions.
American civilians love the AR-15. No wonder, it looks like the M16, the primary weapon of US soldiers for half a century. But misplaced confidence in this civilian gimmick gun can get you killed.
Okay, so misplaced confidence in this civilian gimmick gun, he calls it can get you killed. Okay, the only difference between the AR-15 and the M16 is that the AR-15 doesn't have the select fire option that the M16 has. Otherwise, the AR-15 is in all respects usually the same as any version of the service rifles. You know, for example, if you compare the M16A1, well, then there's an AR-15 that has all the features of the M16A1 except the select fire selection, whether in this case usually that's going to be full auto. So, and the thing is that troops, US Army troops, and I'm sure Marines also, are taught to fight using the semi-automatic mode. So for the most part, the AR-15 functions the same as the M16 in its primary firing mode, because either the 3-round burst that was on the M16A2 or the full auto that was on the M16A1 or the M4 or probably the M16A4, I'm not sure. Those special selections are not the primary firing modes of the M16. The soldiers trained to fight using the semi-automatic mode. They practice their marksmanship in the semi-automatic mode. Their qualification is in the semi-automatic mode. Unless they're doing like a night fire. When we had night fire with the M16A1, it was in full auto, and with the M16A2 it was in 3-round burst. But that was because I guess it was deemed that you needed that in order to hit a target at night. So under Cold War conditions, like the technology that they have now wasn't commonplace in the late 80s. So if you're calling the civilian AR-15 a gimmick gun, then you're also calling the whole M16 M4 series a gimmick gun. And yet, you know, we there's an outcry about how many people have been killed, you know, with the M16 and all those so-called unjust wars, right, that America has participated in. So really, is it a gimmick or is it lethal?
You see, millions of folks did not buy this rifle because it is the best tool for their needs. No.
I think I have to disagree. For one, in my first viewing of this video, I'm not sure that he ever did offer a choice of a firearm that he does not consider a gimmick gun or suitable for a given application. But we'll see in the rest of the video, and since we're really going to look at it this time. But these people that he asserts are following the herd by buying an AR-15, that's not the case. What's happening is servicemen, veterans, they're leaving the service and they want the same rifle that they were trained on, because they know that they are effective with the rifle that they've been trained with, and they have confidence in that rifle, at the very least, because they've been trained on it. What happens then? Well, you've got all these veterans buying it who get behind it. They believe they want to own one as a civilian. Well, then other civilians accept their testimony and they also want to buy one. But that's not the only reason the AR-15 is popular. It's not just because veterans want to own one later in civilian life. It's because the AR-15 is tremendously accessorizable. It's very open to accessorization. There's a huge market of accessories for the AR-15. So that's another reason that it's so popular. Probably a third reason is that the ammo's fairly common and relatively inexpensive compared to specialty rounds or specialty cartridges. So that's another reason that people buy the AR-15. Plus it comes right off the shelf in so many different configurations now, that and so many different rifles fall under the classification of an AR-15 that you know, it's become almost like an umbrella term. No, I'm not saying that weapons that are not in the AR-15 or M16 family or M4 even family are also considered AR-15s. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's so many configurations of the AR-15, even in different calibers now, that it's now a huge umbrella term. So of course it's going to be popular, and that's not because they're following a herd, because each of those purchasers is purchasing an AR-15 that is manufactured or customized the way they want it. So, you know, one lady wants a pink AR-15, another gentleman wants an AR-15 with a free-floating handguard. These people are making choices about what they want in their AR-15, so that's not following a herd.
They purchase their ARs because they fantasize about being soldiers themselves.
So his general accusation is that the reason these people are buying AR-15s, primarily I suppose the civilians, not the veterans, of which there are many in America. I guess he's saying that the civilians buy the AR-15 because they fantasize about being soldiers. Well, you know what? There's a way to fix that. They can just join the army. So one would think that if they were truly fantasizing about being soldiers, that they would actually join the military. I'll be right back. I'm going to get a drink. Or, you know what? I should probably just grab a cough drop. Now, there are lots of people who, for whatever reason, either disqualify themselves from military service or they have no desire at all to serve in the military. So, I mean, are we going to classify those people as soldier wannabes? Well, maybe the ones that are disqualified, you know, genuinely disqualified from military service, maybe we could call them soldier wannabes if they still wish they could serve. But the ones who make the choice not to serve in the military, how can you call them soldier wannabes if they could have become soldiers but chose not to? So he's trying to assassinate the character of Americans who are practicing their Second Amendment rights. This is like, the guy sounds like what's termed a total FUD, Elmer Fudd. So anyway, let's see what else he has to say.
For the soldier wannabe, the AR-15 is the perfect costume prop.
You know what's a great costume prop is an airsoft gun. The difference between an airsoft gun and an actual AR-15 is that an AR-15 is seriously dangerous. An airsoft gun, yeah, it can harm your eyesight, or ruin your dental work, and maybe even damage your hearing if you got a shot into the ear. But there aren't many people dying to airsoft gun fire, and yet airsoft guns are often described as being cosplay props. So, and I think in cosplay they usually do not allow any sort of gun that can actually fire any kind of projectile, if I'm correct. So yeah, that's not, there's no truth to that.
It even shoots real army bullets.
Real army bullets, even ones that are made by civilian manufacturers for civilian sporting purposes.
This video exposes the truth about the AR-15 and reveals the telltale clues of the soldier wannabe. To find out if you're a wannabe, keep score as you watch. There are 5 main categories where soldier wannabes reveal themselves.
5 main categories. Military use. Is he saying if you use the AR-15 in the military that makes you a wannabe? Hunting. Home defense. I'm not sure what he's getting at here. Prepping. Militia. I guess these are the areas in which he's going to deconstruct use of the AR-15 and show that that anyone who does so in these areas is actually a wannabe. but I guess we'll see.
But before all that, here's your first wannabe clue. If you have ever posed in the bathroom mirror with your AR-15, there's a good chance you're a soldier wannabe.
Now, I did that with my M16 in the Army, so I'll just put a 1. I was younger then, but you know what? If you buy a rifle and you pose with it for a picture, how's that really any different than buying a sports car and posing with it for a picture?
Let's look at why the military went with the M16 in the first place.
I mean, if you buy an expensive European sports car and you pose with it for a picture, no one assumes that you're Mario Andretti. So are you then a Top Gear wannabe?
The rifle is constructed of plastic and stamped metal parts. This makes it cheap and mass producible, essential if you are equipping an entire army. Of course, civilians never see this benefit. In fact, gun manufacturers rake in their biggest profits from wannabes so desperate to feel like real soldiers.
Okay, let's back it up a little bit here. Why gun makers would rather sell AR-15s than handguns? Not all firearms are equally profitable. Well, you know what? That stands to reason, given that much more material is used in the manufacture and much more processing time is used in the manufacture of an AR-15 versus a handgun. But this is not limited to AR-15. That's AR-15s. That's like whole wide swaths of rifles. So it's not just the AR-15 that gun makers would rather sell than handguns.
Biggest profits from wannabes so desperate to feel like real soldiers that they gladly pay top dollar for ARs.
That they gladly pay top dollar for ARs. Most Americans would much rather spend much less for an AR than they would to spend top dollar for an AR. For example, you won't find many American men wanting to spend, I would say, much more than $1,800 for the bare rifle off the shelf. You know, they'll it can get more expensive when they add on accessories later, but there are AR-15s that are much more expensive than $1,800, but it's only those people who have that kind of money to burn that want to spend top dollar for an AR-15. So that's utter bullshit. The reason Palmetto State Armory, for one, is such a and becoming more so by the year, is such a popular manufacturer, is that they're selling these semi-automatic rifles to people for like around $600. So you can get a complete semi-automatic rifle for about $600, you know, through Palmetto State Armory, and it's some people will say it's junk, but a lot of people will tell you it's not junk, that they're completely happy with what they bought from Palmetto State Armory. So no, Americans are not trying to buy a rifle for top dollar if they can get away with getting it for much less. It's like anything else. If you see a deal, you're going to go for the deal. You're not going to buy a rifle for top dollar just so that you know, you can burn money that you don't want to burn.
Second, the military wanted a weapon that was optimized for automatic suppressive fire. This high ammo use strategy was deemed critical for post-World War II infantry squad maneuvers and for pinning enemies in place so artillery or air support could destroy them.
Well, that may be why the M16 came along, but it was my understanding that the design of the M16 was more so that it would fire a more lightweight cartridge so that the soldier would be able to carry more ammo than they could before, not so that they could just burn it up indiscriminately in full auto fire. Even if what he says here is true, that's certainly not the way that the Army was training soldiers to shoot when I was in the Army in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. So, I mean, we were being taught that semi-auto fire was accurate fire. So the intention was to, at the very least, take the enemy out of action with repeated, sustained, accurate semi-automatic fire. Not full auto spraying and praying or anything like that.
If you've never practiced live fire squad maneuvers and you don't have access to artillery or air support, score yourself a wannabe point.
I guess that would be me. I did do the buddy team live fire exercise in basic, but I don't presently have access to artillery, so I guess that puts me down for another soldier wannabe point, even though I actually was a soldier.
The military went with tiny, lightweight 22 caliber bullets. It was a difficult decision, but their big advantage was they offered controllable fire.
Why was it a difficult decision? Was it because they'd have to, like, plants would have to retool their production lines for the new ammo? I'm not sure why it was a difficult decision for the US government to liberally spend we the people's taxed earnings. They don't really seem to have much difficulty in spending our earnings for whatever they please without our approval frequently. So I don't know what he's talking about.
In automatic mode. Since the big advantage was they offered controllable fire in automatic mode. Since the auto fire capability has been completely neutered on the semi-automatic AR-15, civilians never see this controllability benefit.
That's wrong. That's very wrong. Drill sergeants in basic training will fire an M16 or now I guess an M4. I don't know if they'll do it now, but they did it when I was in. They would fire that rifle in semi-automatic off of their chin, off of their nose, off of their balls, to demonstrate how controllable and how wimpy, shall we say, the recoil from an M16 is. So, I mean, it's stupid to think that the controllability in full auto wouldn't also be there in semi-auto.
If you've never fired a rifle in true automatic mode, score yourself a wannabe point.
Let me see. I have fired an I never did fire that I can remember, unless it was blanks. I don't think I ever did fire the M16 in full auto. And then of course the M16A2 was in 3-round burst. But like I said, you usually had to go to a special night fire range for that. And again, this is because the Army does not train its soldiers to use either full auto or 3-round burst, or did not, at least in the mid to late 80s, train them to use 3-round burst or full auto that much. Like I said, the only time I knew of when a soldier might use full auto or 3-round burst in training was during the night fire qualification, and I don't think I even went to that. I believe I had KP that day. So anyway, we'll move on.
Automatic suppressive fire burns through ammunition, and that's another reason why the military demanded the whole weapon system be lightweight.
And there you just said it. Automatic suppressive fire burns through ammunition, right? We're taught not to burn through ammunition. For one, you'd have to pick up more brass, and two, I mean, there is an ammo budget in the military.
It allowed foot soldiers to carry more rounds over long distances.
Yeah.
Now, if you've never carried your AR in a full combat load 9 miles in one day,
I've done much more than 9 miles, but I'm not sure if you would consider it a combat load, given that my magazines weren't loaded, but given that I had an M203 grenade launcher on my M16, we'll just say it about offsets it, but full combat load could mean different things to different MOSs, like grunts. I've heard of some horror stories about what grunts have been required to carry. Like here where he says 150 pounds, yeah, I've heard of that. But I've had a full pack LBE helmet rifle, yeah, but I did 23 miles in one day once. Felt like my feet were gonna turn into pancakes. So I forget, did I put down a third point there or not? Because if I did, I shouldn't have, because I think oh, that's right. I think I put it down because I didn't really carry a combat load. So
score another wannabe point. These choices meant they had to sacrifice long-range lethality to get that short-range automatic suppressive fire. So the M16 was only required to be effective out to 400 meters. If you haven't engaged targets at 400 meters with your AR, score another wannabe point.
Let's see, I think 350 meters or 300 meters was as far as I had to engage targets, so I guess the soldier once again has to put down a wannabe point. This is very curious.
The military has since learned that M16 rounds are really only reliably lethal out to 200 meters.
You know what? Reliably lethal. I assume he's talking about torso hits. Let's see. 22 long rifle can go through a Christmas ham at 300 meters. Pass right through, even being wrapped up in denim. So if that were to hit you in the head, or pass through your liver or your heart, that's going to be lethal. And the 5.56 round travels much faster and much flatter than that. So, I mean, we would have to know what they consider reliably lethal, but no one wants to be standing downrange of an M16 or AR-15 while it's shooting at them, whether they're at 200 meters or out to 600 meters or beyond. So you have to ask yourself why. Why don't they want to be standing there? Is it because they're worried their nail polish might get chipped?
Beyond that range, they lose too much velocity and don't consistently yaw and fragment when they hit.
You don't need to yaw and fragment. If you punch a hole through a person, they bleed. Now, so maybe what they're talking about here is immediately lethal, but you know, if a person bleeds out, they're gonna die. And 5.56 millimeter will punch a hole through a person at 400, 500 meters.
This is the big gimmick the 5.56 round relies on.
Now, this is kind of bullshit here too, because which 5.56 round are we talking about? The M193, the M855, there's like, you know, all kinds of 5.56 millimeter cartridges or bullets even, and they don't all perform the same way.
Another way, when an AR-15 bullet slows to less than 2,500 feet per second, its wounding capability drops to about that of a .22 caliber plinking rifle.
Let's look at that again.
Slows to less than 2,500 feet per second, its wounding
I'm not sure. Okay.
Capability drops to about that of a .22 caliber plinking rifle.
Okay, except that 22 does not have the flat trajectory of a 5.56 millimeter. Plus, I seriously doubt it's delivering that kind of energy at that range that the 5.56 millimeter has. And all you have to do is look at the cartridges, see the amount of powder behind the 5.56 millimeter, which is a 223 or 22 caliber round, if you want to call it that, and then compare the 22 long rifle round, and you'll see that the amount of powder is much greater in the 5.56 millimeter cartridge, and that powder is pushing that 22 caliber projectile at much higher speeds, which results in much greater foot-pounds of energy at impact than the 22 long rifle. Nevertheless, the 22 long rifle, as I just said, can pass through a Christmas ham at 300 meters. Now, do you want either a 22 long rifle or a 5.56 millimeter cartridge, or a bullet rather, round passing through your body at 300 meters? Is that something you want to volunteer for?
More on this problem later. There is a horror.
So he keeps bringing up this little
rifle. More on this problem.
Says this is some kind of article from the School of Advanced Military Studies, United States Army Command and General Staff College, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and it's entitled Increasing Small Arms Lethality in Afghanistan, Taking Back the Infantry Half Kilometer. So, and this, what is this, 2009? So I think it's because of these experiences that they started pulling M14s, old M14s from the racks and modernizing them and making the Mark 14 EBR, and also started talking about, or I think they started even making like heavier rounds, 5.56 millimeter, but heavier grain bullets, and then started thinking about heavier projectiles. Now, this doesn't mean that Iraqi insurgents or members of the Taliban in Afghanistan didn't die when shot with 5.56 millimeter from an M16 or M4 or an M249 squad automatic rifle or a squad automatic weapon, you know. So is he, what kind of casualties or killed in action did we have in Iraq? Was it like 5,000 or 6,000 U.S. servicemen died in Iraq? And how many of those were due to IEDs and not enemy weapons fire, right? So how many of those deaths occurred because a soldier, one of our soldiers with an M16 or M4 faced off with an Iraqi or a member of the Taliban, let's just call them jihadists, armed with something other than an M16 or M4, and they died because the M16 or M4 was anemic when they went toe-to-toe with an AK. You know, how many of those 5,000, 6,000 killed in action were due to that scenario? I'm betting it wasn't that many. Because for one thing, they would have to be hit, you know, with AK fire in order to die from that. So, or probably more accurately, the scenario would have to be that they shot at a jihadist and the jihadist didn't die, and then the jihadist killed them through some means, any means. So then in that case, the anemic qualities, allegedly anemic qualities of the M16 or M4 were responsible for the soldier's death. I'd really like to see some figures on that, because that's what he's trying to push here.
Later, there is a horrifying real-world example of the AR's non-lethality. The cowardly 2017 Las Vegas mass shooter hit 480 people with bullets fired at long range from an AR. Fortunately, 422 of those good folks survived. Look.
I wasn't aware of these figures. That's pretty incredible that many people got hit.
At through the cold lens of combat effectiveness, though. That means, thank God, his AR was only lethal for 12% of targets hit.
Yeah, but what was the range he was shooting from? And that's not even my main argument against what he's asserting here. Let me see, the Las Vegas shooter was how many yards from the concert? Says there was a crowd of 22,000 there. Las Vegas shooting map. The hotel's about 400 yards from the stage. So, okay, so that's 400 yards. And so now he's trying to say that, like, at 400 yards, mind you, at least, the 5.56 millimeter round fired from, I guess they're saying it was an AR-15 he was using, was only lethal, 12% of the time. He's trying to suggest that it's because the round is so anemic that they died only 12% of the time. But he's not really factoring in like extremity hits in the limbs, right, or parts of the body that are not going to be immediately fatal. So how many times we would have to know how many times the person was hit in the torso or the head in order to get a better representation of how lethal those shots were. But it would also be helpful to know how many rounds were fired. I seriously doubt that he fired 480 something rounds and that they were all hits. I would imagine that there were lots of misses in there. So let me see if we can find out how many rounds he supposedly fired. Says he fired more than 1,100 rounds, so he wasn't even, he didn't even hit a human-sized target even 50% of the time. So why would you think that he was landing lethal torso hits over 50% of the time? You know? It's inaccuracy at that range that he's trying to suggest is actually a weakness on the part of the round fired from an AR-15, when it's the real culprit is the inaccuracy for the great majority of this failure to kill. And, you know, thank the heavens for that.
Would you trust a safety rope that failed 88% of the time?
And by the way, the guy was supposedly using a bump stock, right? Well, if you've ever watched videos of people using bump stocks, you'll see they don't exactly lend themselves to accurate aimed fire. So he was just spraying at an area target, which was the concert, and not really apparently caring, you know, who got hit. I don't know if there were any targets that they could point to show that he specifically targeted those people, especially at 400 meters? Anyway, let's go.
Maybe you've convinced yourself that the AR is a great safety rope that failed.
So he's saying 88% failure rate. Missing your target is not attributable to the firearm if the shooter was not aiming, had not properly zeroed the rifle, did not have good accessories for aiming his rifle. You know, there's so many factors. Like, even the ammo could be less accurate than other ammo that he could have bought, you know, so
88% of the time. Maybe you've convinced yourself that the AR is a great hunting rifle. If so, score yourself a wannabe point.
I don't personally know. I have heard that it's just fine for shooting hogs, wild boar. So, I mean, if we were hunting wild boar, I think that it's probably fine for that. So, does that mean I gotta put a point down? Let me see.
Maybe you've convinced yourself that the AR is a great hunting rifle.
I guess I'll put myself down for a point.
If so, score yourself a wannabe point. Before the recent AR-15 fanboy craze, its cartridges...
Recent AR-15 fanboy craze. I bought a Colt AR-15A2 Delta H-bar in 1988 because I had recently been issued an M16 A2. So the AR-15A2 was basically the top of the line civilian assault rifle, if you want to call it that. You could call it a carbine if you want, whatever. Semi-automatic rifle. It was the cutting edge, we'll call it, you know, because that was what the military was currently using, and I merely had one in semi-automatic. And the AR-15A2 Delta H-bar was considered, supposedly they took, I believe, like the two most accurate specimens out of 200 or maybe 100 rifles, and then they would take those two and then they would accurize them even further, and that was the AR-15A2 Delta H-bar. So my rifle was supposed to be even more cutting edge than the M16A2, except for the lack of the 3-round burst. So I don't know what he's talking about, this recent AR-15 fanboy craze, because veterans were buying AR-15s back in the mid-80s, you know, because they had served in Vietnam and had used the M16 in Vietnam, so they wanted something similar as a civilian, something they had been trained on. So I think this is just it's a liberal gun control narrative that they're trying to push. They're trying to say that this is a very recent craze because they're trying to undermine the terminology that says that liberal gun control, gun grabbers aren't allowed to ban any rifle that is in common use. So they're trying to say, well, it hasn't been in common use until very recently, which is absolute nonsense. It's been in common use since probably the mid-80s at least.
Were always correctly considered to be varmint rounds. If you've got a real varmint problem, okay, you can subtract one wannabe point. but only if you paid less than $500 for your AR. Still, clever marketing.
So he's saying that because an AR-15 costs more than a bolt-action varmint rifle, that it's not good for hunting varmints. Even though the AR-15 has a quicker second shot than a bolt-action rifle does. So you can actually put an animal out of its misery quicker with an AR-15 than you can with a bolt-action.
Marketers are now trying to sell magical deer hunting cartridges for AR-15s. Take a look at their...
Now why would he say magical deer cartridges? Better performing deer cartridges?
fine print though. You'll see these miracle rounds shouldn't be used past 100 yards.
While shots should still be limited to ranges maxing out at around 100 yards, the small bullet just sheds too much energy beyond that range. Hunters can now feel confident in taking their rifles afield during deer season. So I would imagine that this is actually talking about all 5.56 rounds, and the reason for that is because unlike with humans battling other humans, when hunting animals, the intention is to be as humane as possible to the animal to eliminate their suffering. In combat, there isn't that same consideration for the enemy, so it doesn't matter whether they are immediately killed as long as they're removed from the battlefield.
At least the marketers are not yet brazen enough to claim AR rounds can take down elk, bear, and moose.
But you probably could take down elk, bear, or moose with an AR-15 because of the fact that you can shoot multiple rounds. Yeah, you would probably use, something of a heavier caliber, but I don't think anybody is saying to use an AR-15 to hunt elk, bear, or moose.
If you've convinced yourself that an AR-15 is a great home defense gun, rack up another point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to put myself down for that one, because no, I'm not convinced that the AR-15 is a great indoor home defense rifle. Is it a good outdoor home defense rifle? Yes, I think it is. Like maybe you live on a ranch, maybe you live on some place where you have some land, right? Not in an urban area. But I do agree that the AR-15 is probably not ideal for home defense indoors because of the risk of over-penetration.
The home defense scenario calls into play none of the AR-15 strengths.
Lightweight is not good. Why not? A lightweight rifle is easier to, or maybe he's talking about the weight of the ammo. Well, you know what, the weight of the ammo factors into the weight of a loaded magazine, which factors into the weight of the actual whole rifle loaded, which factors into the speed at which you can maneuver the weapon and get it on target. So I think he's wrong on that count. 30 round magazine, you know, with a home invasion, you could have a gang of as many as 5 guys enter your house. Yeah, you might need that 30-round magazine. So he's wrong on that count. 200-meter range. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that your minimum engagement distance is 200 meters, you dumbass. You can certainly engage somebody at much less than 200 meters. So I think he's wrong on that count too.
Its lightweight is meaningless if the farthest you have to carry it is a couple of yards down the hall.
Yeah, so he's but a lightweight rifle is much quicker to bring up on target and to maneuver, especially in close confines of indoor areas. So no, you're wrong on that one, pal.
Its 30-round magazine is ridiculous, considering the average number.
His 30-round magazine is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Let's quantify that criticism.
Rounds fired in successful civilian self-defense incidents is 2.
I'd like to see those figures. I really would. And then he said, this guy sounds like he eats ice cream with Joe Biden.
Common number of shots fired is 1.
Most common number of shots fired is 1. What, a warning shot? Yeah, I don't think so. I think if someone's actually going to start shooting their weapon, I think it's going to be more than 1. And especially with a pistol, it takes usually more than 1 round to drop somebody. So I'd really like to know where he gets these figures. Is that all sources, what does that say, listed? I can't tell. All sources
it's 200
linked.
meter effective range.
All sources linked. Where? Down here? Okay, so you can check out these links to see, you know, where he's getting his information from.
Becomes a joke when you remember civilian self-defense shooting incidents almost universally occur at 4 to 12.
Okay, so he's saying it's 200. Let's back it up a little bit.
Incidents almost fired is 1. Its 200 meter effective range becomes a joke.
Okay, and if you tell your promotion board or your Soldier of the Month board that the effective range of an M16 or M4 rifle is 200 meters, you're gonna fail that question. It's not 200 meters. It's much longer than that. He's fucking lying. So, but anyway, he says the 200 meter effective range is a joke.
When you remember civilian self-defense shooting incidents almost universally occur at 4 to 12 feet.
Right. So 4 to 12 feet is less than 200 meters. So the M16, M4, AR-15 is actually more lethal at 4 to 12 feet than it is at 200 meters, 200 yards. So I don't know what fucking joke he's talking about. Maybe he's the joke, because I mean, I'm not sure this guy's brain like even works logically. He just sounds like he's like trying to be a fucking comedian or something.
By the way, shooting someone at 200 meters is not self-defense. That's murder.
Unless you're out on the ranch somewhere, or maybe on the southern border having to deal with Joe Biden's, fluid southern border, and cartel members coming across the border with firearms of their own, and you're having to defend yourself at 200 meters. I don't think that's murder. You know, what are you going to say? Oh, you should just leave the area? Okay, but then they have rifles that are not AR-15s with a much longer range, potentially, than this gimmick rifle, the AR-15 that you have. So, and there isn't any cover nearby because you're out on an open plain. So how are you supposed to get out of that situation? What, you take cover behind your thin-skinned automobile? Is that going to save your life? Or is shooting back at 200 meters going to save your life? That's not murder. If you're defending yourself, it's not murder.
And according to the military, there's more bad news for the AR at short ranges. 85% of 5.56 bullets don't do their yaw and fragment gimmick until traveling.
Yaw and fragment gimmick. What about the punching a hole through a human being and otherwise hydrophobic? Would that be the proper word? Probably not waterproof, since skin, I guess, actually absorbs or can absorb water, but let's just say blood-contained human, a 5.56 millimeter round punching a hole through an otherwise blood-contained human. Is that a gimmick?
Almost 5 inches through the target's body. In the field, this means they can pass right through enemies without mortally wounding them.
Yeah, and he's being very selective about how he highlights his sources.
Target's body. In the field, this means they can pass right through.
So it says, with small-statured or malnourished enemy combatants. Does that describe your average American? The majority of bullets will just pass through them unless the bullet strikes bone or enters at an oblique angle, which both are highly probable. Okay? But he's just highlighting the parts he wants you to see.
Through enemies without mortally wounding them, even when the bullet is flying at full speed.
So now it's got a bunch of anecdotal evidence, like it talks about Lieutenant Colonel David Petraeus was shot in the chest by an M855 round from an M249 saw. He walked out of the hospital several days after the accident. Several days. So he was removed from the battlefield. You understand? The M855 round removed him from the battlefield. That's the intent of 5.56 millimeter. Had the round performed, and it didn't sound like he was in any condition to fight back. He was pretty concerned, I guess, for his health. Had the round performed optimally, he likely would have been killed. Did you hear that? But they're saying, well, it didn't perform optimally for whatever reason. And then there's another anecdote. The author witnessed a soldier shot in the shoulder from a distance of 75 meters during a night live fire exercise, and the soldier was walking around smoking a cigarette 20 minutes after the accident. Yeah, so it was probably a flesh wound. It didn't sever any major arteries, so he was probably waiting for the medics or the ambulance to show up.
Army reports are littered with stories of our own soldiers.
Littered with stories. A soldier in the author's battalion had a negligent discharge with an M249 saw during the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003 in a closed space of a building. Poorly instructed, he disassembled the weapon before unloading it, and the weapon fired at it's probably not due to his being poorly instructed. It was probably due to his being rattled. He disassembled the weapon before unloading it, and the weapon fired at the cyclic rate, firing approximately 100 rounds. From a distance of 3 meters, 4 soldiers were hit in the extremities and none sustained life-threatening wounds. There it goes. That's what I was saying before about the Las Vegas shooting. They were hit in the extremities and none sustained life-threatening wounds. So that's probably why the 88% were not killed when hit with rounds from the Las Vegas shooter, is they were probably hit in the extremities, or like in that other anecdote, they were shot at an oblique angle, or the rounds struck some bone, right?
Easily surviving close-range friendly fire hits from 5.56 bullets.
So then finally it says the requirements for the infantry squad are that they have weapons capable of reliable incapacitation from close range to a distance of 500 meters. This capability does not exist in the current family of 5.56mm ammunition, either with military or with commercial off-the-shelf ammunition. Okay, so let's assume that is true, alright? And let's assume that Rational Prep's assertion that the AR-15 is only effective out to 200 meters, let's assume that's true. Well, if we also assume that what he says about shootings, that they all occur within 4 to 12 meters, was it? Or 4 to 12 feet? Well, then that's within the effective range of the AR-15. So, doesn't sound like it's a joke rifle, doesn't sound like it's a gimmick rifle.
It takes a wannabe to trust a gimmick gun for his home defense. If you've convinced yourself that the AR-15 is a great gun for preppers, score yourself another point. It's not a great hunting tool or a home defense tool. It's not reliably lethal at over 200 meters. And it can't.
And yet, like, many prefer 5.56mm over 7.62 by 39mm because 5.56mm has a much flatter trajectory than 7.62 by 39mm. The Russian, the old Russian choice for cartridge for an assault rifle. Oh, and by the way, pretty much the world's choice, you know, except in more Western countries, or more advanced countries, I guess we'll say.
Be concealed. Just what is a serious prepper? And it can't be concealed.
It can't be concealed. Really, really, really. Okay, so, like AR-15s never have folding stocks? Yes, they do. Do they have collapsible stocks? Yes, they can. Can you separate the upper from the lower? Yes, you can. Can you buy it in a pistol configuration with a short barrel? Yes, you can. So, really what he's saying there is absolute bullshit.
Just what is a serious prepper gonna do with a gun as limited as that? If you said, assault an enemy, score another point. First, a rational...
Okay, why wouldn't you be able to assault an enemy with a semi-automatic version of a military assault rifle that its troops are trained to fire in semi-automatic?
A prepper would work very hard to avoid anything so stupid and dangerous. Second, why are you making enemies? An enemy, score another point. First, a rational prepper would work very hard to avoid anything so stupid and dangerous.
Well, yeah, but then if you're forced into the situation, then what do? You're gonna, what? I guess you're gonna resort to your 22 long rifle or your 12 gauge shotgun that doesn't have an effective range beyond 200 meters? then you're going to be wishing you had an AR instead.
Second, why are you making enemies when you should be building alliances?
Oh, alliances. Oh, alliances. Okay, I get it. So this guy, that's his thing. He's a liberal, maybe, or he's at least building alliances with liberals who are building alliances with communists and other enemies of the United States of America. So this is his survivalist strategy, is to raise his backside up in the air and let people have a bang at it. That's how he's gonna survive. He's just gonna whore his ass out, and hope that the other guy decides not to kill him because he enjoys banging away at his ass.
With the AR as a prepper gun is simple logic. By definition, an SHTF. The biggest problem with the AR as a prepper gun is simple logic. By definition, an SHTF situation is a resource-constrained scenario. The whole idea...
Okay, so he's saying there's no resupply of ammunition, so maybe he's suggesting what? That you should use a black powder rifle? Or that you should use maybe a bow, an arrow, or a spear? I'm not sure what he's getting at here. I'll tell you one thing. 5.56 millimeter is going to be easier to reload than 22 long rifle. A rimfire cartridge that's probably going to be deformed beyond use when it's ejected from the 22 long rifle, semi-automatic 22 long rifle. So I don't know what this guy, what he's getting at. I'll give him a listen. Let's see what he says.
The idea behind the AR is high resource use suppressive fire. It is a gun built to burn through ammo.
No, I don't think that's true. I don't think it's meant to burn through ammo. That's a good way to burn up your barrel. So
that's the opposite of what you want. The smartest SHTF strategy would involve tactics.
Wait a second. Just because you can fire lots of rounds very quickly through an AR-15, that doesn't mean you have to. You can still choose not to. That's why lots of AR-15 owners, or I don't know if we'll say lots, some choose to get shorter barrel AR-15s and then buy a suppressor so that they can actually take a more stealthy approach, so that they don't have to shoot lots of rounds at someone, that they can shoot and scoot.
In weapons that use small amounts of ammo.
Okay, what's he pushing now?
What you want. The smartest SHTF strategy would involve tactics and weapons that use small amounts of ammo.
Until you need more. Yeah. You're assuming that you always get to choose the terms of your interactions with opposing parties. Right? Like this one, this is a shotgun. Oh, okay, so what if you're on an open plain and now they're shooting at you from 400 meters? You're going to take them on with that shotgun? No, you're not, you dipshit. Okay, and this bolt-action rifle. Oh, look at you in your little ghillie suit all sniping away from, 600 meters. Now what happens when the squad that you're shooting at, that party of raiders, all open up on you in semi-automatic or maybe more with like some kind of special triggers like binary triggers, or maybe they even registered or modified their firearm to fire in full automatic, and now they're peppering your little sniper hide, but you're going to take them all out with your super accurate rifle, right, Mr. Badass? I guess you didn't see Lone Survivor, right? This guy's a dolt.
Finally, we come to the AR-15 militia boys, the biggest fools of the bunch.
This is just inflammatory. Like, he's essentially saying, like, the whole US military that uses this rifle in a select fire version, that they're just a bunch of clowns, right?
You plan to use your AR-15 to fight all enemies, foreign and domestic?
Why wouldn't you?
Score yourself a big wannabe.
Why? Why should I score myself a big wannabe point for that?
Point. The first problem with using an AR for militia action is that you're trying to play an automatic fire game with a semi-automatic gun.
Again, I don't know about foreign armies, but Western armies train their soldiers to engage in marksmanship that uses sustained, aimed, accurate, semi-automatic fire. So, yes, they'll probably have squad automatic weapons, light machine guns, belt-fed machine guns, and you're going to have a tough time facing them, but now try that with a bolt-action rifle or a shotgun. You're going to have a better chance with an AR than you are with the bolt-action or the shotgun. And just because you have the capability of a semi-automatic AR-15, that doesn't mean that you have to choose to take advantage of it. You can still elect to avoid a situation. That comes with training. You know, you just have to have some training or experience to know when to avoid an encounter. But if you don't have the option to avoid that encounter, which one do you want? Do you want the AR-15 that's in semi-automatic? Or do you want a bolt action or a shotgun? Or a muzzle loader? Or a bow and arrow? You want the AR-15. Now, if you want to get your AR-15 modified so that it is select fire or full auto or whatever, there's a way to do that. You can do that by registering it, you know, with the BATF, I guess, and your local authorities. But so that's an option. But that's only an option with rifles that you can modify that way, and the AR-15 is one of those rifles that you can modify that way. And that's why liberal gun confiscators, anti-Second Amendment types, are against the AR-15.
In addition to auto-fire rifles, grenades, and heavy weapons, all modern armies also carry belt-fed machine guns.
And really, this is actually why we, the people, should have access to these weapons. It's because our government or some foreign army might use these weapons against us. Granted, I perfectly understand that we've got some really irresponsible people in this country who we would, you know, not want these weapons winding up in their hands because they lack any training. But if we're denied these freedoms, then there's no opportunity to get that training.
If you've never maneuvered under direct automatic fire, score another point. I know not many.
Yeah, so I'll put myself down for that one. I haven't.
Civilians get a chance to do this. So here's a quick alternative test.
But, you know what? Anybody can maneuver under automatic weapons fire, whether it's a helpless Jew in the Holocaust or someone carrying an AR-15. Your maneuvering under automatic weapons fire has nothing to do with the weapon you carry.
If you've ever lost your shit when a bee comes near, there is no way you will keep it together under suppressive machine gun fire.
Interesting.
But the number one reason why only a wannabe would choose an AR-15 as a militia weapon is level 4 body armor.
What? What are you talking about?
It is specifically designed to stop 5.56 rounds, and it is standard issue for all modern armies.
Level 4 body armor. Yeah, this was in 2019, before we got to see just how many Russians don't have good body armor.
It takes a profoundly ignorant fool to choose a weapon that can't even penetrate the armor of his enemy.
Yeah, well, it looks like you're the one who's the ignorant fool.
If you believe you are the chosen one that can defeat level 4 body armor with your AR-15, score another wannabe point. Even the U.S. Army is not that dumb. They are ditching the 5.56 round and the AR-15 platform. That's right, the military is done with the gimmicks, the problems, and the lack of real power.
Yeah, well, guess what? SIG. That was 6.8, right? Yeah, SIG. 6.8 millimeter rifle for sale. Yes, I'm at least 18. Enough with the pop-ups. Well, this one's in 2.77 SIG Fury. I'm not sure if that's 6.8 or not. But this one is, well, it was selling, but it's out of stock right now, and it's selling for $22,444, basically. This is the Army's new 6.8 millimeter rifle, and as you can see, it is for sale to civilians. So, and now I don't know if he would call this an AR-15. A lot of people would because of its configuration. But is your argument that we should just go ahead and buy one of these instead of the AR-15? Or are you just mocking, you know, the purchase of any kind of semi-automatic rifle? But let me look at this real quick. 2.77 SIG. Let's see. Google. 6.8 millimeter 2 inches is 2.67. So 2.77 SIG Fury might be 6.8 millimeter then. Can I back up here? Yeah, I don't need another pop-up. Yeah, 2.77 SIG Fury, or otherwise known as 6.8 by 51. So there you have it. I mean, the Army's new rifle that he's pushing is available to civilians in a semi-automatic version. So that kind of kills that argument.
I will let the top brass explain.
Billy, do I have to really?
The 5.56 round simply does not have the mass to penetrate the body armor worn by the enemy.
Except that the enemy isn't wearing any body armor.
The American soldier needs a weapon that is effective against protected targets, and they also have to have a deadly effect at long ranges.
Effective against protected targets, I guess that's targets with body armor, and they also have to have a deadly effect at long ranges. Since when the whole philosophy was that they only need to have a wounding effect. And this is a different guy. This is General Norman.
I'm not gonna ask what your wannabe score is.
Looks like mine's about a 6 if I kept good track of it. I don't know that I did.
The truth is, there's nothing wrong with dreaming about being a real soldier.
Yeah, I did before I enlisted, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure how much I dreamed about it. I think I dreamt about it more when I was actually reading the Army brochures at the MEPS, at the, what is it, Military Entrance Processing Station, something like that.
So if you have the balls to admit you bought your AR-15 for fantasy fulfillment reason.
Fantasy fulfillment? Well, no, it's more like it's better if you have it and don't need it than if you need it and don't have it.
You have my respect. But if you still insist you bought this gimmick gun for some kind of serious purpose, all I can say is that if things ever get really real, your wannabe obsession with this neutered and obsolete costume prop is very likely to get you killed.
Well, I mean, that's just firefights in general. You know, you've got like a 1-to-1 kill to death ratio, so that's why you need training, you know, so that you could get better with the firearm. Otherwise, you've got as much of a chance of getting shot as you do as shooting the other guy. But I'll tell you what, if you're trying to take a shotgun or a bolt-action rifle up against a squad of guys with semi-automatic rifles, even at 500 meters, you're going to get your ass kicked. You really don't have much of a chance of standing up to that. So let's continue here. So yeah, some nice little music there to, you know, make it seem like it's more credible. But anyway, this video is filled with lots of false premises and inflammatory language, and there's probably a bunch of liberals that'll just wolf this shit down greedily. But those of us who did serve in the U.S. Army, we know how lethal the M16, M4, AR-15 family of rifles is, and that's why when we leave the service, we buy one in semi-automatic, because we want what we've been trained on, because we know we can use it, and we can use it effectively. So, be skeptical of the propaganda. You know, the founding fathers of the United States of America, they wanted your right to defend yourself to be secure, and they tried to ensure that security with the Bill of Rights, specifically the Second Amendment. If you allow liberals and their bullshit propaganda to abolish the Second Amendment, then there will be nothing standing in the way of our own government or a foreign government just mowing right through we the people like we are blades of grass. It is far better for we the people to own each one of us an AR-15, if only that could, you know, be the case, than it is for us to be unarmed. That's my reaction to this bullshit video. You can leave your comments if you like. No doubt there will be liberals who will make fun of something I said in here, because that's what they excel at. They They look for jobs where they get to run their mouths all day and not really do much of anything of value. And that's why so many of them get into politics. Meanwhile, the guys that are doing the work in this country, lots of them own AR-15s.